Hey, what's up, guys? It is Quinn with Golden Era Auctions, and today I am here to tell you guys why you should not open a card shop in 2025. But before we get to that, thank you guys so much. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers. At the end of the video, I'll be giving you guys the details to our 1,000 subscriber giveaway, so please stay tuned for that. But without further ado, let's get a little background information. In 2022, we opened a card shop, and we were open for only approximately a year and a half before closing, and a lot of the experiences we personally had weren't what we expected before getting into it. The first one that we experienced was the overall cost of the entire operation. When you're opening a sports card business, when you go from online to in person, there are so many more costs that you need to consider. It's like this for any business, but you got to think about rent, utilities, Wi-Fi for a business is significantly more expensive than it is, for your home. So when we first started, we started with roughly a $30,000 budget. And before even opening our doors, we were almost completely out of money. When you're out of money, you have to sell the product quicker, and can see how this can become a cycle very quickly if you are not completely aware of all the upfront costs that are associated with opening your card shop. In our area, it's rather cheap as well. If you're in a bigger state or more expensive real estate, it can be even more expensive for rent. For example, the rent was $1,000 for the first month, and the security deposit, it's $2,000. Wi-Fi was $300 or $400 to set up, and so on. You even got to think about things like trash cans, things in your bathroom. All this stuff adds up. So if you're starting out on a lower budget, you may want to keep your sports card business online until you can grow, in my opinion, to at least $100,000 to open a shop. And that leads into our second point today, which the return on investment is rather limited at first when you start your shop. What I mean by this is all those upfront costs, you don't get anything back on. When you buy a card for 50 cents, and you can sell it for $2 after fees, all that, it leaves you with about $1.20 profit. But all these extra things that you pay for every month eat away at the profit of every item you buy. And when you have to make more profit to make up for everything else you're paying for, and this can even include something like employees, things like that, but we'll get to that later in the video, you now have to start buying things cheaper, but you also have to sell things quicker. It's just a situation where personally we experienced it in 4 to 5 months into the business. We realized we made a bit of a mistake and knew basically once the lease was up that we would be getting out of there. And another huge problem with opening a shop in 2025 that could change once Fanatics takes over. We'll see. I feel like it's been a bit of a mixed bag on if they're going to go through with a lot of promises, but is the access to product as a new shop is incredibly difficult. What I mean by this is there are people who have licenses with Topps, Panini, Leaf, whatever, and they get product and they don't even have a shop. They have to prove they have a storefront, but they'll just take the pictures of an inside of a building or something, and they'll get it sent directly to their house. They get to do breaks. They get to sell the boxes to breakers, or just sell them wholesale quickly. And it makes it very difficult for new shops to get sealed product. And after the first few months, we started to believe that transitioning our shop to strictly singles, online singles, in person, that type of stuff, even letting other people sell their singles out of our shop was the way to go. But it's honestly, in my opinion, not very possible to do that. You need sealed. We've had dozens of potential customers come in looking for all the new hobby boxes, all that stuff. And if you can't have access to hobby, then you have to go for retail. And when you can only go for retail, you may have to buy stuff from stores like Target, Walmart. I don't think anyone really wants to do that because it makes you look like a scalper, which everyone has their opinion on that. But I would say generally that's seen as a negative thing. And it's kind of, I wouldn't say lame, because I think there's nothing wrong with a hobby shop having retail, because sometimes some people will buy it sealed and bring it to you to sell, if they can't return it to the store or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with having retail, but it's something that without hobby products, I found to be uncomfortable pretty quickly. And we tried very hard to get connections with, and I'd say honestly, this may be the most important point of the video, and people may not think about as much because you think, I'll open a shop, and once I prove to Panini that I have a shop that can make revenue and I'll be spending tens of thousands of dollars every month, that it's all going to be great. The problem is Panini specifically, Topps as well, but Panini specifically has bad customer service. They don't have great sales reps. A lot of times you have to go through a middleman. This was what we had to do. We tried to do this for months. But if you're not willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars on the Leaf product in order to have access to the Panini products that are more desirable and at a cheaper rate, then you're out of luck. And with breaking and all that, they have so many people who are willing to buy sealed off the press that you really don't matter that much to them. And maybe in the future, if things die down, I know Panini is going to be unlicensed soon or sell, that maybe they'll give those licenses, have a relationship quicker. But for now, just extremely difficult. And if you're watching this video and you're trying to open a TCG shop, a lot of these concepts apply. Obviously, TCG shops do have different aspects like tournaments, stuff like that. So this is more pertaining to sports cards, but I know getting sealed Pokemon is extremely difficult. I think Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe are a bit easier, but getting sealed Pokemon is pretty difficult as well. So that kind of applies. But next point here, number 4, is once you open a shop, you are every position in the shop. What I mean by this is you're the clerk, you're the maintenance person, you're the boss. You have to keep it, even online you have to account for taxes, all that. But now you have to think about sales tax in your shop as well. I don't know what the sales tax in your state is, but that's something you have to start charging people, versus if you're selling on Whatnot or eBay, they take care of all that stuff. Now you have to worry about that. You have to worry about things like POS systems, working the register. You may have someone trying to sell you $10,000 cards, and you have to go check out someone who is buying $10 worth of stuff. And you have two options here. You're either every position at once, or you have to hire people. I know when we had our shop, we didn't do a ton of hiring. There are 2 of us, so we had more than enough manpower with our shop size, which physically wasn't small. Customer-wise, a bit tiny, but we only tried to hire 1 person, and that fizzled out pretty quickly. So something else you have to worry about with employees, and this is with any business, but specifically with cards, you have to worry about stealing. You have to really vet who you're hiring to work in your shop, especially if you have plans of not being there sometimes. If you have to run errands, you don't feel like coming in that day. Because stealing with cards is a lot different than stealing from Walmart or something. Someone can have their friends come in, sell you a deal for double the price. They say, I bought these cards, and you'll have no idea. It's not like they stole from you, but they overpaid on purpose. I'm not saying every employee is going to do this. It's probably pretty rare, actually, but even with security cameras, if you have audio in your store, it can still slip through the cracks. So essentially, you have to be willing to take on all these different positions. If something breaks, unless you want to hire a plumber or whatever to take care of it, you're going to have to deal with that. You're just going to want to make sure you are multifaceted in a lot of different skills, versus if you're just doing an online business where you mostly worry about shipping stuff, selling stuff, buying stuff, and repeat. And this is related to our final point, which is just the amount of time that goes into a card shop. I've personally known people who have tried to balance having a job and having a card shop, and it's essentially impossible. When we did it, it was our full-time business. So throughout the day, we would be, if there weren't people in the store, we'd be doing online stuff, things like that. But if you're trying to have a job and have a card shop, if you're not going to delegate all the responsibilities to someone else, it is extremely time consuming, versus when it was a hobby in your basement or in your garage or something where you can, go have dinner, come back, list some cards, go live, do whatever. Now you have to be there from whenever you open, whenever you close. I'm not even going to lie, we messed around with that a little bit, making the hours shorter or putting a sign on the door like be back for lunch, stuff like that. And overall, that stuff's just negative. for a business. You want to make sure your hours are concrete as possible, not changing very much. Because I noticed that affected our business pretty quickly. Like, why aren't you guys open till 7 or 8 when, some other people get off work? And it's like, it's tough, especially if you don't have an employee. And possibly most important is on-hand inventory versus online inventory sits a lot more and can become a lot more costly. What I mean by this is when we had our shop, we really tried to balance listing cards on eBay or whatnot and making sure we had enough product to have in our store for customers to come in and buy. The issue is if you have a slow day in store, you didn't make any revenue and you lost out on things you could potentially sell online. So the more stuff sits on the shelves, the more costly it becomes. And of course, the second you take a card from your showcase and you put it online, someone comes in the next day asking for that player or that Pokemon. It just always works out like that. So it kind of relates back to our other points where you need to be willing to put a ton of money aside for your first year, 2 years. They say, most businesses aren't profitable until the first 3 or 5 years or something. If you expect people just to break down the door and buy all your singles, buy all the sealed, especially if you had to go on eBay or buy it in person, if you don't have that connection with Panini that we talked about earlier yet, or Topps, it can become very costly. The product can sit for a long time where players or certain sealed sets could lose their value. That's something we experienced a lot. When a player's hot, you want to have a Brock Purdy in your store to have when someone comes in, but you don't list it online. 2 weeks later, his cards are worth a lot less. You lost out on a potential good sale because you were trying to conserve things. And that's something that happened a lot. It's a bad cycle. And it's another reason why I think it's really tough to open a shop in 2025. Last thing before we get to our conclusion here is you got to look at how much competition is in the area as well. When we opened our shop, there were about 3 or 4 different card shops or TCG shops in like a 5-mile radius. We live in a relatively big area, but it's not huge. And clearly that just divided, especially when one has been around the longest and has already grown a huge customer base. It's a lot harder to pull people away because people are loyal to card shops. So if they like them, they most likely maybe will check you out, maybe won't. And that's if no one else is doing any like funny games like bad-mouthing you, things like that also happens in cards a lot, like any business. But after all this, if you still want to open a card shop, a couple tips I would say is just make sure to go to a card show beforehand. Go to even 5 or 6 of them. Set up. See if you enjoy the fast-paced wheeling and dealing from a seller's perspective. Because something that a lot of people don't tell you too is there are a lot of people who want to stand around and talk for hours. Really, we've had people come into the shop, great people, but they want to talk for 2 or 3 hours at a time. And it doesn't really equate to dollar bills too much, which not everything is about the money, of course, but that's something to keep in mind. So when you go to the card show and you set up, see if you enjoy the social aspect of it. See if you enjoy doing the clerking. And also if you're good at buying. It's a lot different from buying at a card show where, okay, you buy a $100 card and sell it for $150 online. That's great. Now when you have a shop, you have to worry about people bringing in large collections. And you have to worry about overpaying on something that could potentially stick, or, if they have thousands of bulkier cards, you have to worry about, moving that, making sure you got a good deal. All these things become a lot more complex. And while you can also overpay, you also have to worry about underpaying, where people may not always like the offer you have. If you're not that, if you ever watch Pawn Stars or a show like that, if you don't have that personality where you can tell someone, hey, this is what I have to pay for something to make money. And if you're too worried about just making the person happy, which I did a ton of times, I'm way better at buying at shows or seeing a collection versus when people would bring them into the shop, because you start to feel bad. You always get sob stories, that type of thing. And when someone drives to your place, sometimes you'll feel obligated to pay them more than you should. It's not a good thing, but it does happen. So these are other things to keep in mind. Make sure to hone these skills, in my opinion, before, again, All this is from our experience. If you think you're in an area where it desperately needs a shop and business will be booming and you have a ton of money to start and you can get sealed, that's great. Go crazy. But these are just things to keep in mind. Do not always be overly optimistic, because I know there's a lot of videos about opening a card shop. So this is just kind of to give you guys tips on why it may not be a great idea. That's the video, guys. Please make sure to comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And if you guys want to enter our 1,000 subscriber giveaway, which we just hit, you can comment down below one question you want answered about the card business or what you think someone else would want answered. You can do this up to 3 times. You also have to thumbs up and subscribe. We'll be giving away a PSA 10 slab of a star player, someone we're going to pick up soon. It's going to be a really sick card. And to win that, just make sure to do those 3 things. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.